Alright, today's video we're going to get into another part of the saga, which is belt slip. If you guys recall from one of my other videos, I mentioned now that I swapped on a 2.5 inch pulley, or 2.5 inch pulley, now I'm getting some issues with belt slip. First couple pulls with the car were solid, did some more data logging the night that I went out on the Burke Street Cars roll racing event that we did that night, and notice I was losing anywhere from 1 to 2.5 pounds of boost. So doing the math, assuming 1 pound of boost is 20 horsepower, I was potentially losing almost 50 horsepower, if not a little bit more in spots. So the fix to this today is I got together with Van at Revin Racing and got a Gates racing belt, and we got an 84 inch instead of going down to an 83 or an 83 and a half. Van did say that 84 was the way to go. So the racing belt is supposed to be a harder belt, stiffer belt, I guess. It's supposed to be better than the Gates Green, which everybody rants and raves about, but supposedly the Gates Green are more so for power equipment or like low RPM stuff, where the Gates racing belts are made for high RPM shit like a supercharger on a fast car. So if you guys have ever worked on a GT500 before, I'm not sure if Terminators are like this, but this is a car you want in the air to do the belt. You are not getting down from the radiator panel area to do the belt like I can with the SM95. So we're gonna have to get this in the air, probably take off a lower panel underneath the lip, and try and route this belt through. So I'm not really looking forward to this, but it needs to be done because I'm losing some power in the big end. More importantly, when I put race gas in it, I'm probably losing even more power. So we're going to go ahead and get the car in the air. I'll show you guys what it looks like underneath, and we'll try and document as much as I can. So just to give you a test peek inside the belt area and hose area, as you can see, there is literally no room. There's no room to get your hands in to be able to wrap that belt all the way around. I can barely get in to get the tensioner to get tension off of the top. So we're gonna go ahead and try and do everything from underneath and see how it goes. Alright, so first thing we're gonna do is try and get the socket on the tensioner underneath, but we're gonna see I can get the tension off. Got it on the tensioner, and should give me a little bit of leeway to get this joint off. Alright. Got a 1 down off of the top belt. So now we can check out the actual routing. Alright, so now we're underneath the car. You're going to see the bottom side of the tensioner. You're going to see the bottom side of the AC. AC runs off of the 10 rib crank pulley, obviously. Got the tensioner and another idler up top somewhere that you can't see from down below. So basically a lot of this is going to be fishing through without seeing it. There should be, I can't see too much in there, so we're probably not going to get too much detail in here, but I'll double check the routing before I rip anything off. Alright, so unfortunately this added a certain level of complication to this task. I did not really look at it closely to find out that the blower belt is behind the serpentine belt. So right here you're going to see a routing diagram. I can go ahead and throw a better picture up on the video once it gets posted. But you can see the routing around the blower belt, which is red, green belt, which is serpentine. Right here is your tensioner for the supercharger belt, and I believe right here is a tensioner, or yeah, I think right here is a tensioner. It's a 15 millimeter for the serpentine belt. So I'm going to go ahead and fish all this shit out for the supercharger belt, and then we'll try and get in here to loosen up the tensioner, or hold the tensioner for the serpentine belt, just to pull this off the crank pulley, pull the belt out, throw a new belt in, and then snap it all back in without fully taking the belt off. So we'll see how that works out. In theory, that's how it works, but you guys know how that shit goes. Not sure what this angle is going to look like until I get to editing. We'll get the socket off of there. I'm going to get the supercharger belt off of the AC, and we will feel around since I cannot see up there very good. And coming off of an idler up top here. Alright, so I gotta say, this is probably one of the worst fucking belt jobs I've ever had to do. So, if you can see where the wrenches here are tied together, you have to get onto that pulley, which you can't do from underneath because of the sway bar. So you have to get it from up top, just get a little bit of tension to slide off the serpentine belt and pretty much pull it for the most part off. Now, the other problem is getting the blower belt off. Again, I don't know if you're going to be able to see in there, but I had to take off the tensioner for the blower belt. The blower belt is tucked actually back behind the tensioner, it seems. So you have to actually pull off the tensioner to get the fucking belt off. Yeah, this sucks, to say the least. So I got that off. We're going to get the new belt on, hopefully. Not going to get too much information getting it on because it's a pain in the dick. But watch out for those things. You got a 11mm bolt to get off a water coolant line bracket. You have to get that off down by the alternator. Once you get that off, you can slide that away a little bit and just barely get a 15mm crescent wrench down there on that serpentine belt tensioner. And again, it is very fucking tight. Once you get that off, then you unbolt the blower tensioner with another 15mm, and it doesn't even drop all the way through. It just lays on top of the sway bar. That's how tight it is. So now we're going to feed the new belt up through, hopefully get the tensioner back in, and maybe another hour or so at this point. So today is now Saturday. On Thursday night, I worked like, I'm fucking sad to admit this and ashamed to admit this, but I worked for a good part of 5 fucking hours on that belt system on Thursday night, and it fucking kicked my ass. I'm still not done, but I'm not done over pickiness at this point. I decided to give this another stab last night when I got home from work. I got the belt routed all up. And if you guys have any experience with GT500s to know how the supercharger belt tensioner works, or lack thereof, how it works, that is where we encountered another problem. So, I had to stop. I now gotta wait a week on other parts, and let me show you why. So, if you guys have ever experienced that beautiful thing right there, I got the belt routed up, everything was good. I go and set my, what is a 3/8 socket or ratchet rather than a 1/2 inch. Put the 3/8 on there and put a breaker bar on it, got my tension on. I was getting ready to put the blower belt up over the top pulley and be done, and all of a sudden my socket basically, you know, went like this. It angled. So I was like, what the fuck? While this is an expensive fix, could have been much worse. I was scared. You know, I didn't really realize where I was at the moment and thought I busted something, you know, on the bolt inside the block. So, needless to say, did a little bit of research. I was going to try and snag a stock tensioner somewhere. Fucking stock tensioners are 160 bucks. I was going to see if somebody had one that they wanted to give away cheap. And then I started thinking, you know, a lot of people say go with the Thump Racing tensioner. Man, that is a hard fucking 550 bucks to swallow on a tensioner. I mean, I do the research, I see what they help. Yes, it's going to help my problem, but I just spent like $1,000 on the car last week. Now we're gonna get another 500, 550 bucks on a tensioner. Should resolve all my problems with belt slip, but it's a hard pill to swallow. 500, 550 bucks on a tensioner. So I was looking at the American Racing Solutions or the thump tensioner. Everybody loves the thump tension. Well, not gonna say everybody loves it. There's a lot more information out there on the thump tensioner. Everybody says go thump, go thump, go thump. So I wanted to find out what the difference was between the thump and the American Racing. It turns out that thump may have had a lot of problems with the housings cracking on theirs around the, and I don't know if you're going to be able to see it from the back side, right around the back side there where my pinky is, where that belt, or where the spring nub is. A lot of thumps have been having problems with those cracking. VMP no longer makes theirs. From what I understand, theirs had a similar problem, even though it was a billet piece. Theirs had a similar problem with stripping with a 3/8 socket or ratchet, like I showed there, amongst on top of breaking where the thump ones were breaking. So now I'm doing a little bit more digging. The really fast guys are saying go with the American Racing Solutions. That one is 60 bucks cheaper than the thump, so it lightens the heartache a little bit on that one. So I'm gonna go ahead and get that thing ordered up. Hopefully I can get it by mid next week. I'm probably gonna order that one from Van at Revin Racing again, because he is pretty quick on response. So I'm gonna get that ordered up from him, get that in, try and get this fucking thing back on and get it running again. Then we're gonna fight with the serpentine belt to get it back on, but I figured I'd at least give you guys an update. I had to shut the video off. When you're frustrated working on something, stopping every 20 minutes or half an hour to record video and tell people why you're frustrated is not a good thing. I was screaming and yelling. My arms from my elbow to my fingers are swollen and ripped up and black and blue because there just is no fucking space to work in this thing. So you're not going to get as much out of this video as maybe anticipated. But at least you know what you're getting into. I would say if I were to do this again, as much as I hate paying a shop, I would probably take it to somebody to do it. It will probably be an expensive chore to take to a shop, but the amount of time and effort I have into this now, I would fucking just much rather have somebody else do it.